The dim lights of the Zalara Prime trade hub flickered like distant stars, illuminating the faces of those gathered in the conference room of the Mercantile Alliance. I stood at the head of the long, polished table, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. The air was thick with tension, each faction represented by their own self-interested glances, whispering conspiracies beneath their breaths. Merchants, smugglers, and technocrats filled the room, each one keenly aware of the stakes we were dealing with, an alien technology that could change the course of energy production across the galaxies. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, projecting my voice over the murmur, we are on the cusp of a revolution. This technology could allow us to harness energy in ways we've only dreamed of. Imagine, clean, boundless power for every world in our reach. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd, but I could see the skepticism in some eyes. I cast a glance at the representatives of the Draxian Syndicate, their leader, a burly man with tattoos snaking up his neck, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed defiantly. "And how do we know you won't just shove this tech down our throats, Ethan?" he challenged, his voice gravelly and low. "We all know your ambitions." "Ambitions exist in every corner of this room," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "But I believe in collaboration. If we unite our resources, we can ensure this technology benefits all of us, not just a select few." "Collaboration is just a fancy word for control," another merchant chimed in, her green skin glistening under the lights. "What guarantees do we have that you won't monopolize this invention?" I took a deep breath, aware that I had to tread carefully. "I'm not asking for control. I'm asking for trust. We can create a council to oversee the distribution of this technology. I'll put my own share at stake. If I fail, I will step down. But for that to happen, we need to pool our resources." A low murmur filled the room, mixed with the rustling of fabric and the clinking of glasses. Just then, the door slid open and a figure slipped in unnoticed. I narrowed my eyes, recognizing the silhouette. Sarah Lawson, the rogue trader known for her cunning and audacity. She had a reputation for slipping into places she didn't belong, and somehow, she had found her way into our meeting. "What's this?" "A secret party," she quipped, a mischievous smile dancing on her lips. "And I wasn't invited?" "Sarah," I said, my voice a mix of surprise and annoyance. "This meeting is for authorized personnel only." "Authorized personnel," she echoed, raising an eyebrow. "That's a laugh. In my experience, it's usually the unauthorized ones who know where the real treasure lies." As she strolled further into the room, I could see the gears in her mind turning. She didn't care for the formalities. This was a woman who lived by her own rules, and I had no doubt she was here for one reason: information. "Listen, Sarah," I warned, trying to maintain control of the room. "This isn't a game. We're discussing matters that could affect entire worlds. If you have something to say—" "Oh, I have plenty to say," she interrupted, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "But I'm more interested in what you're hiding. I overheard something about a secret auction. Care to fill me in?" The room fell silent, the air thick with suspicion. I could feel the weight of every gaze on me, each person calculating their next move. The Draxian leader shifted uneasily, and I knew I had to act fast before this turned into a free-for-all. "An auction," I replied, feigning ignorance. "You must have misheard. We're discussing a collaborative effort here, not some shadowy deal in the dark." Sarah's smirk widened, and I could sense her confidence radiating. "Oh, don't play coy with me, Ethan. I know how this works. You'll keep the technology under wraps, sell it to the highest bidder, and those of us on the fringes will be left to scavenge the scraps." "Enough," I said, my voice rising. "This is not the time for your theatrics. We're trying to build something that could help everyone, including your precious underprivileged worlds." Her expression shifted, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of vulnerability. "You really think you can save them?" she asked, her tone softer now. "You think you can fix a broken system with a single invention?" I hesitated, taken aback by the sincerity in her voice. "It's a start. We have to try." "Try?" she scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're just another merchant with dreams of grandeur, Ethan. But you're forgetting one crucial detail. What you consider progress is often a burden for those struggling to survive." With her words hanging in the air, I felt the uneasy undercurrents in the room shift yet again. The merchants exchanged glances, weighing their loyalties, their ambitions, and the implications of what Sarah had just said. Let's not get sidetracked, I said, attempting to regain control. The technology is the key. If we can come together. Together. Sarah laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the room. You think these factions will ever work together? They'll tear each other apart for a scrap of power, and you know it. Maybe you're right, I admitted reluctantly, my mind racing. But that doesn't mean we can't at least try to establish a framework for cooperation. A chance to change the status quo. Change the status quo. Her laughter faded, replaced by a steely determination. If there's an auction, I'll be there. I won't let you or anyone else dictate who gets access to this technology. She turned to leave, and I felt a rush of urgency. Sarah, wait. You can't just walk out. But she was already gone, slipping through the door as easily as she had entered. The room buzzed with conversations, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I had a choice to make, one that could determine the fate of countless worlds. Let's reconvene tomorrow, I announced, watching as the merchants began to disperse. We need to strategize. This technology cannot fall into the wrong hands. As I stepped out of the room, the weight of the unknown loomed over me, threatening to consume my ambition. The future was uncertain, and I could feel the tides of power shifting. Sarah Lawson was out there, and she wasn't going to simply let this slip away. I had to be prepared for whatever came next. The stakes had just risen, and the game was far from over. As I stood in front of the expansive window of my penthouse office on Zalara Prime, the hustle and bustle of the galactic trade hub sprawled below me. The neon lights of the market district flickered like distant stars, a chaotic symphony of commerce and ambition. My thoughts were a whirlwind, racing towards the upcoming auction that could change everything. The stakes were higher than ever, and with every passing moment, I felt the weight of the Mercantile Alliance resting squarely on my shoulders. Ethan, are you even listening? My aide Jenna pulled me from my reverie, her brow furrowed with concern. Of course, Jenna. I'm just contemplating the future, I replied, turning to face her. Her expression softened, but I could tell she was still skeptical. We need to ensure everything is in place for the auction. The bids will come thick and fast, especially with the technology at stake. She tapped her datapad, bringing up the profiles of potential bidders. I leaned over, scanning the list. I know. The moment we unveil this energy technology, it will be a feeding frenzy. If we play our cards right, I can eliminate my competition and secure power like never before. Just remember, Ethan, there are more than just merchants in the game. You've got rogue traders, scientists with agendas, and even those who'd rather see you fail than succeed. Let them try. I smirked, a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. I've anticipated every move. No one will outmaneuver the Mercantile Alliance. As Jenna continued outlining our strategies, I couldn't shake the nagging thought at the back of my mind. What if someone like Sarah Lawson had already set her sights on the auction? The rogue trader was known for her cunning, slipping through the fingers of those who tried to catch her. I dismissed the thought. I had to focus on the plan at hand. Later that night, I found myself pacing the dimly lit floor of my office, the holographic display illuminating my face with an eerie glow. I was deep in thought, replaying every detail of the auction in my mind. The technology we were about to auction was groundbreaking, and the opportunity for power it represented was intoxicating. But what if Sarah had a plan? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I remembered the stories of her escapades, how she managed to outwit even the most seasoned traders. The image of her flashing smile, infused with mischief and defiance, resurfaced in my mind. She would be a formidable opponent. Ethan. Jenna burst into the room, interrupting my thoughts. We need to discuss the security measures. We can't afford any slip-ups during the auction. Right. Let's tighten them up, I replied, forcing myself to focus. I want surveillance on every corner of the auction house. No one gets in or out without my knowledge. Understood. And what about your competitors? She pressed. Let them come. I'll deal with them as they come, I said, my voice steady. With each passing moment, I felt the stakes rising, and I was more determined than ever to come out on top. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit corner of Zalara Prime, Sarah Lawson was plotting her next move. The rogue trader had just returned from her daring escape, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Her heart raced as she replayed the stolen information in her mind, the details of the auction swirling like a vortex of opportunity. Marcus, we need to act fast, she said, her voice low and urgent as she met with a scientist in a secluded bar teeming with shadows. Ethan has no idea what's coming. If we work together, we can expose the Alliance's plans to monopolize this technology. Marcus glanced around, ensuring they weren't overheard. You know the risks, Sarah. The Alliance won't take kindly to our interference. We could end up as targets. Better targets than the countless worlds that will suffer under their monopoly, she shot back, her eyes blazing with conviction. We can't let this technology fall into their hands. It's our chance to empower the underprivileged worlds. Think of what we could do. I'm in, he said, his voice resolute. But we need a solid plan. We can't just disrupt the auction, we need to turn the tide in our favor. As they plotted, the tension hung thick in the air. Sarah knew that teaming up with Marcus could be risky, but she also saw the potential in his scientific knowledge. Together, they could orchestrate a gambit that might very well alter the course of the auction, and the universe. The night of the auction arrived, and the opulent hall where it was held was buzzing with anticipation. Merchants adorned in extravagant garments mingled, exchanging hushed whispers and furtive glances. My heart raced as I surveyed the crowd, the energy palpable. I moved toward the center stage, the podium where I would present the technology that could redefine our existence. Ethan, remember, confidence is key, Jenna reminded me, her voice steadying my nerves. I know, I replied, taking a deep breath. We'll show them what the Mercantile Alliance is capable of. As I stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. The lights dimmed, and a spotlight illuminated me. I took a moment to absorb the sight of eager faces, each one a potential ally or adversary. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice echoing through the hall. Welcome to the auction of a lifetime. Today, we unveil a technology that will change the very fabric of energy production across galaxies. This is our moment to shape the future. As I spoke, I caught glimpses of Sarah and Marcus in the crowd, their expressions hidden behind their masks of intrigue. My heart raced again, the realization hitting me like a bolt of lightning. They were here, plotting something against me. The auction commenced, and bids flew across the room like asteroids in a meteor shower. My mind raced, calculating each offer, each move. I was determined to stay ahead, but the feeling of being watched, hunted, crept closer. Ethan, Jenna whispered, pulling me aside during a brief pause in the action. I'm getting reports of unusual activity near the back entrance. We may have intruders. Damn it. I muttered, my mind racing. I can't have any distractions now. We need to ensure the security teams are on high alert. But as I turned to refocus on the auction, I caught a glimpse of Sarah, her eyes locked onto mine with a knowing glint. She was planning something, and I had to be ready. The tension in the air thickened, and I could almost feel the electric charge of impending conflict. The stakes were higher than ever, and I had to be one step ahead, no matter the cost. As I stood at the entrance of the grand auction hall on Zalara Prime, a mix of excitement and dread coursed through me. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air electric with the potential for betrayal. Merchants from every corner of the galaxy had gathered, their eyes glinting with ambition and greed. I could hear the hushed whispers of deals being made, alliances forming, and schemes being plotted. This was not just an auction, it was a battleground. Are you ready for this? Marcus Reed's voice broke through my thoughts. He stood beside me, his face a mask of determination, though I could sense an undercurrent of uncertainty beneath his cool exterior. His eyes darted around the room, scanning the crowd as if searching for hidden threats. Ready as I'll ever be, I replied, forcing a smile. I had to maintain my composure, even though my heart raced at the thought of sabotaging Ethan Pierce's plans. The leader of the Mercantile Alliance was not just a rival, he was a formidable opponent, and the stakes had never been higher. The alien technology up for bid could change everything for the underprivileged worlds I often traded with, if we could just get our hands on it. As the auctioneer took the stage, I felt a surge of adrenaline. The lights dimmed, and a spotlight illuminated the podium. Welcome to the most anticipated event in the galaxy, the auctioneer announced, his voice booming through the hall. Today we unveil a groundbreaking invention that could change the very fabric of energy production across civilizations. I exchanged a glance with Marcus. Time to get to work, I said, my voice low. We had a plan, one that involved creating chaos to distract Ethan and his allies while we made our move. The auctioneer continued, describing the technology in grandiose terms, but I barely heard the words. My mind was already racing ahead, plotting our next steps. As he unveiled the sleek metallic device, the heart of the invention, I felt a pang of longing. This was the key to empowerment for so many worlds, and it was tantalizingly close. "Now let us begin the bidding," the auctioneer declared, and a wave of energy rippled through the crowd. The bidding started at a staggering sum, but I knew that wouldn't deter Ethan. He would do anything to secure this technology, and I had to act fast. "Let's create a distraction," I whispered to Marcus, my eyes scanning the crowd for potential allies, or enemies. "We need to draw their attention away from the stage." He nodded, his expression grim. "I'll create a diversion. You get close to the bidding table." I moved through the throng of merchants, my heart pounding. I could hear snippets of conversation, feel the weight of their ambitions pressing down on me. They were all here for one reason: to seize control of the future. Just as I reached the edge of the crowd, Marcus set his plan into motion. He activated a small device hidden in his pocket, releasing a blinding flash of light accompanied by a loud bang. Gasps erupted throughout the hall, and heads turned in confusion. "Now!" I shouted, plunging forward as chaos ensued. Merchants stumbled back, some shielding their eyes, while others shouted in alarm. I darted through the chaos, weaving between startled traders until I reached the bidding table. Ethan stood there, his expression a mixture of annoyance and surprise as he attempted to regain control of the situation. "What's going on?" he barked, scanning the crowd. "Looks like your little party is falling apart, Ethan," I said, stepping closer, my voice dripping with feigned innocence. I could see the gears turning in his mind, the realization dawning that he had underestimated the situation. "Sarah Lawson," he said, a hint of a sneer in his tone. "What are you trying to pull?" "Just making a little mischief," I replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. "You didn't think it would be that easy, did you?" Before he could respond, I caught a glimpse of Marcus out of the corner of my eye. He was working his way through the crowd, positioning himself for the next phase of our plan. My heart raced. We were so close. As the crowd began to settle, I was keenly aware of the eyes on me. Some merchants regarded me with disdain, others looked intrigued. I had become a wild card in this game, and I needed to capitalize on that. Ethan turned back to the auctioneer, trying to salvage the situation. "Let's resume the bidding," he ordered, his voice firm but laced with tension. But I wasn't done yet. "You think you can just take control of this technology, Ethan? What about the rest of the galaxy?" I challenged, my voice rising above the murmurs. "What about the worlds that will suffer if you monopolize this invention?" He shot me a glare, and I could see the anger simmering beneath his composed exterior. "And what do you propose? Hand it out like candy to the very worlds that can't even afford to bid here? You're a fool, Sarah." "I'd rather be a fool than a tyrant," I retorted, my heart pounding in my chest. The tension in the room was palpable, and I could sense the shifting alliances forming around us. As the bidding resumed, I could see Ethan's determination hardening. He had a plan, and I needed to be one step ahead. I glanced at Marcus, who was now near the back of the hall, his eyes locked on me. He nodded subtly, indicating that he was ready for whatever came next. The auctioneer called for the next round of bids, and I took a deep breath, preparing for the chaos that was about to unfold. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, and I knew that if we failed, it wouldn't just be our dreams that were crushed, it could mean disaster for countless civilizations. Just as Ethan began to raise his bid, I took a step forward. "Wait!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the noise. "What if I told you that this technology has a hidden feature, one that could turn it into a weapon?" The room fell silent, and I could feel the shock reverberating through the crowd. I had thrown a grenade into the proceedings, and now everyone was on high alert. I locked eyes with Ethan, who looked momentarily stunned before anger flared in his gaze. "What do you mean?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. I smirked, hoping to draw out his desperation. "Let's just say that whoever has control over this technology will have the power to reshape the universe. But it can also be used for destruction. Are you really willing to gamble everything on that?" A murmur swept through the crowd, and I could see the other merchants weighing their options. This was the moment I needed. If I could sow enough doubt, we might just be able to shift the balance in our favor. Ethan's expression hardened. "You're bluffing, Sarah. You don't know anything about this technology." "Or do I?" I shot back, feeling the rush of adrenaline surge through me. You're not the only one who's done their homework, Ethan. And I'm willing to risk it all to ensure that this invention doesn't fall into the wrong hands. The auctioneer, sensing the tension, tried to regain control. Let's get back to the bidding, shall we? The technology is still for sale. But I could see the cracks forming in Ethan's confidence. The other merchants were starting to question their allegiance, and I had to keep the momentum going. This was our chance to disrupt his carefully laid plans and turn the tide in our favor. As the bidding continued, I could feel the stakes rising higher with each passing moment. It was a delicate dance, and I was determined to lead. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and I would do everything in my power to ensure that we would not only survive but emerge victorious. The aftermath of the auction hung heavily in the air like a thick fog, the tension palpable as I stood on the rocky outcrop of an uncharted asteroid. Sarah Lawson's crew had cornered me, their eyes glinting with determination and fire. I could feel the weight of their demands pressing down on me, squeezing the breath from my lungs. They wanted the technology, this fantastic invention that could change lives, empower entire worlds, and in my hands, become a tool of dominance. You're going to share it, Ethan, Sarah said, her voice steady yet laced with urgency. The oppressed worlds deserve a chance. You can't hoard this for your precious mercantile alliance. It's not just yours to control. Her words stung like fresh wounds, each syllable a reminder of the moral battle I had been waging within myself. I had always considered myself a pragmatist, a realist who understood the necessity of power in the cosmos. But now, facing Sarah and her crew, I felt the full weight of my choices. I could see the anger in Sarah's eyes, the passion that drove her to defy the established order, and for a brief moment, I questioned my motives. It's not about hoarding power, I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. It's about stability, about ensuring that this technology doesn't fall into the wrong hands. You think I can just hand it over and trust that it will be used for good? You don't know the chaos that would ensue. Chaos? No, Ethan, chaos is what you're bringing by keeping it to yourself. Sarah stepped closer, her crew flanking her like a pack of wolves ready to strike. You're so blinded by ambition that you can't see the real stakes here. This isn't just a transaction, it's a lifeline for countless civilizations. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. Lifeline or weapon, it's all the same if we don't handle it carefully. You think you can just waltz in here and demand what you want? You don't understand the intricacies of intergalactic trade. This is bigger than you, bigger than me. Our voices echoed off the jagged rocks that surrounded us, the desolate emptiness of the asteroid amplifying our confrontation. I glanced at the crew members behind Sarah. There were some faces I recognized from the trade routes, some I'd seen before in the underbelly of Zalara Prime. They were all too aware of the struggles faced by their worlds, and the desperation in their eyes only fueled my determination to keep the technology under wraps. Suddenly, from the shadows of the asteroid, Marcus Reed stepped forward, his expression dark and calculating. You're both missing the point, he said, his voice low and smooth. This technology can't simply be divided like a pie. It needs a visionary to guide it, someone who understands its true potential. I narrowed my eyes at him, wary of his intentions. Marcus had always kept his cards close to his chest, and now, he was playing an entirely different game. It was hard to ignore the glint of ambition in his own gaze, a spark that mirrored my own. And you think you're that visionary? I challenged. Absolutely, he replied with confidence that unsettled me. While you two bicker about morals and ethics, I see an opportunity to harness this power for a greater good. Just imagine, a technology that could revolutionize energy production across the universe. We could eliminate poverty, war, and desperation. But it needs to be controlled. Sarah scoffed, crossing her arms. Controlled? By whom? You? You've already shown your true colors, Marcus. You're not a savior, you're just as selfish as Ethan. You want to wield this power for your own ends, and you're willing to trample over anyone who gets in your way. The tension in the air thickened, and I could feel the imminent clash of our ideals, each of us wrapped tightly around our visions for the future. The asteroid, with its barren surface, seemed to shudder under the weight of our conflict. I had to act before this spiraled further out of control. Enough. I shouted, cutting through their bickering. This isn't about you both. It's about what happens next. We have to decide what we want to do with this technology before it consumes us all. Our shared silence was momentary, but it hung like a dark cloud. Each of us knew the stakes. The fate of entire civilizations sat precariously on the edge of our confrontation. Yet, as we stared at one another, a deeper truth began to unfold. The technology itself was a double-edged sword. Sarah's voice broke through the silence, filled with conviction. Ethan, if you truly believe in your vision of stability, then you should understand why it's crucial to share this. The fear of chaos is what keeps the powerful in control, and you know that better than anyone. You think I don't know that? I snapped back, frustration boiling over. I've spent my life navigating the treacherous waters of power dynamics. I've seen how quickly things can fall apart when the wrong people get their hands on technology they don't understand. Then help us understand. Sarah urged, desperation creeping into her tone. Help the worlds that are suffering. You have the chance to be a part of something bigger than yourself. Don't let greed dictate your path. Her words pierced through my defenses, and I felt the familiar pang of guilt gnawing at my conscience. A part of me wanted to believe her, to embrace this vision of collective empowerment. But another part, a darker, more primal part, clung to the notion that control was the only way to ensure safety. As I contemplated my next words, Marcus interjected, his voice smooth yet filled with an unsettling intensity. You're both too naive to see how fragile this situation is. If we don't act now, we risk losing everything. I propose we take the technology and use it for a new order, one where we decide who gets access and who doesn't. I felt my stomach twist at his suggestion. The notion of snatching the technology for our own gain felt like a betrayal of everything I had ever stood for. You think you can dictate who deserves a chance? That's not leadership, Marcus. That's tyranny wrapped in a shiny package. Before Marcus could respond, the ground beneath us trembled, sending small rocks skittering down the surface of the asteroid. A jolt of panic surged through me. The technology, still in my possession, still potentially unstable, had somehow activated. My heart raced as I glanced at the others, the realization dawning on me that we were teetering on the brink of disaster. Get back! I shouted, instinctively stepping toward the device. We don't know what it can do. But before I could reach it, Marcus lunged forward, his hand outstretched toward the technology. We need to harness it. Now. No. I shouted, my voice laced with urgency. You can't just take it. As if on cue, the ground shuddered violently, and a blinding light erupted from the device where it lay. Sarah screamed, and I pushed forward, but it was too late. The weaponized feature had been accidentally activated, and a surge of energy erupted into the void, engulfing us in its chaotic brilliance. In that moment, everything we had fought for, our ambitions, our grudges, our dreams of power, felt insignificant against the raw force that threatened to consume us. The asteroids around us began to crack and splinter, and I realized that our confrontation had spiraled into something far more catastrophic than any of us had anticipated. As the blinding light enveloped me, I had one last thought: we were no longer in control. The power of our choices had turned against us, and the universe awaited the outcome of our recklessness. The chaotic sparks of the malfunctioning weapon danced in the dim light of the asteroid cavern, illuminating the faces of the three adversaries who stood on the precipice of destruction. I felt my heart race as I glanced between Ethan and Sarah, both of whom wore expressions that mirrored my own mix of fear and determination. The air crackled with tension as the weapon's hum grew louder, threatening to consume us all. Ethan, we need to shut this thing down. I shouted, my voice barely piercing through the cacophony of alarms and the impending doom that loomed over us. The weapon was spiraling out of control, and we had moments, if that, to prevent a disaster. Ethan, the ambitious leader of the Mercantile Alliance, nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. I know. But we have to work together. We can't let our egos drive us to failure now. His tone was urgent, and for the first time since we'd met, I sensed a flicker of sincerity beneath his calculated veneer. Together? You think I'd trust you after all this? Sarah shot back, crossing her arms defiantly, though I could see the worry flickering in her eyes. She was a rogue trader, a woman who had thrived on independence and cunning. The notion of collaboration was anathema to her nature. Trust isn't what we need right now, Sarah. We need action, I interjected, stepping closer to the pulsing core of the weapon. Help me find the control panel. If we can access it, we might be able to override the system. With a reluctant sigh, Sarah uncrossed her arms and approached the weapon. Fine, but if you try anything funny, I won't hesitate to take you down, Marcus. I couldn't blame her. I was the wild card in our trio, a scientist with motives shrouded in secrecy. But right now, survival was our shared goal. I moved swiftly, scanning the complicated circuitry that glowed ominously. There. That panel. I pointed, adrenaline surging through me. Ethan sprinted forward, his hands deftly working to open the panel while Sarah and I flanked him, keeping an eye on the unstable energy readings. We need to stop this overload before it reaches critical capacity, Ethan said, his voice steady despite the chaos. I need you two to cover me. Cover you? Sarah scoffed. You want us to stand back while you play the hero? No way. Just keep an eye on the door. We don't know if the others will come looking for us. If they do, we will need a plan, I said, my focus unwavering as I tried to decipher the tangled mess of wires and circuits. Fine, she relented, glancing nervously toward the cavern entrance. But if this goes south, I'm out of here. Ethan's fingers moved with urgency as he began to manipulate the control panel. If we can just redirect the energy flow, he was cut off by a violent tremor that shook the asteroid, sending dust and small debris raining down from above. Damn it! We don't have time for this. I shouted, the urgency of our situation settling heavily on my shoulders. Ethan, focus. He gritted his teeth and continued to work, sweat beading on his forehead. I just need a few more seconds. Sarah, could you? I'm on it, she snapped, her instincts kicking in as she positioned herself at the entrance, her blaster drawn and ready. If anyone comes through that door, they'll regret it. Ethan's hands moved faster, and I could see the sweat trickling down his temples. I'm almost there. Just a little more. The sound of footsteps echoed closer, and I knew we had mere moments before we'd be overrun. Ethan, hurry. Got it. He pressed a button, and the weapon emitted a low, thrumming hum that gradually began to stabilize. I've redirected the energy flow. We should be safe for now. Safe? For how long? Sarah asked, darting back into the cavern, her blaster raised as shadows danced along the walls. Long enough, Ethan replied, wiping his brow. But we need to get out of here before they figure out what we did. As we prepared to leave, the realization began to settle in. We had worked together, despite our differences. We had formed a fragile alliance born of necessity, but it was a start. Listen, I said, taking a deep breath. If we're going to make it out of here, we need to talk about what comes next. We can't just go back to our old ways. The technology, it's too powerful. I agree, Ethan said, glancing between us. But how do we share it without falling into the same traps that led us here? Sarah crossed her arms, her brow furrowed in thought. Maybe we could form a council of sorts, each of us representing different interests. I could reach out to other traders and communities. Not a bad idea, I said, encouraged by her suggestion. But we need to ensure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. We've seen what that leads to. Ethan nodded, determination hardening in his expression. Then let's do it. Let's make sure this technology empowers the underprivileged instead of destroying them. As we stepped closer to the entrance, I felt a strange sense of hope dawning amidst the turmoil. We might have different backgrounds and motives, but perhaps, just perhaps, we could forge a new path together. Let's get out of here, Sarah said, her voice steady. We have a galaxy to save. And with that, we emerged from the shadows of the asteroid, stepping into the uncertain light of a new dawn, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The tension hung thick in the air, a palpable force that crackled like static electricity. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as Marcus stood before us, the weaponized technology humming ominously in his grasp. His eyes, once filled with a mixture of ambition and desperation, now shone with a manic resolve. You don't understand, he shouted, his voice trembling with intensity. This power can change everything. It can save countless lives if we wield it correctly. I exchanged a look with Sarah, her expression a blend of determination and fear. We both knew this wasn't the way to go. Marcus, please, I implored, raising my hands in a gesture of peace. We can work together. We don't have to resort to violence. But he wasn't listening. With a swift motion, he activated the device. A blinding light erupted from the core, illuminating the rocky surface of the asteroid, sending shadows dancing across our faces. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen in place, watching as the power surged around us, crackling and snapping like angry tendrils of energy. "Marcus, stop!" Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through my shock. "You're going to destroy us all." He laughed, a wild sound that echoed in the emptiness. "You don't get it. This is the only way to force you to understand my vision. Power is the only language you two speak." I felt a surge of panic as I realized the gravity of the situation. The device was unstable, and Marcus was losing control. "We have to deactivate it," I yelled, breaking free of my stupor. "Now!" But before we could act, the energy pulsated violently, the ground beneath us shaking. I stumbled, trying to regain my footing. Sarah rushed toward Marcus, but he pushed her away, desperation etched across his features. "Get away from me," he yelled. "You'll ruin everything." In that moment, everything went wrong. The weapon backfired, a violent explosion of energy erupting from the device. I felt the shockwave hit me, sending me sprawling to the ground. The asteroid trembled beneath us, rocks and debris flying into the void of space. "No, Marcus!" I screamed, but it was too late. The explosion engulfed the area, a blinding flash that consumed the asteroid and everything on it. My vision blurred as the brightness seared into my retinas, and I felt myself being thrown backward weightless. Time seemed to stretch as I spiraled through the air, the reality of our impending doom crashing down on me. When the light finally faded, I found myself drifting in the cold darkness of space, the remnants of the asteroid scattering around me like cosmic confetti. My breaths came fast, panic threatening to overwhelm me. I pushed myself to my feet. No, my body floated, suspended in the vast emptiness. I searched frantically for any sign of Sarah or Marcus, but all I saw were fragments of what once was. "Sarah! Marcus!" I shouted, my voice swallowed by the void. There was no response, only the chilling silence of the cosmos. I grasped at the debris, trying to pull myself toward the nearest piece of rock, but my limbs felt heavy, like they were anchored by the weight of despair. Then I saw it, a shimmering light in the distance. It flickered, pulsing gently. My heart raced as I kicked off from a chunk of asteroid, propelling myself toward the glow. As I drew nearer, I realized it was the weaponized technology, floating in the abyss, its power still crackling ominously. It was beautiful and terrifying, a paradox of creation and destruction. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the surface. The technology hummed, resonating with energy. I could feel its potential, the promise it held, but the devastation it had wrought was undeniable. "What have we done?" I murmured, tears welling in my eyes as the weight of our failure crashed down on me. I turned back, hoping against hope to see Sarah or Marcus emerging from the wreckage, but there was nothing. Just endless darkness and the haunting echoes of our choices. The dreams we had of a better future, of sharing this technology with those who needed it most, now lay shattered like the remnants of the asteroid. Suddenly, a thought struck me like a bolt of lightning. I had to destroy it. I had to ensure that this power wouldn't fall into the wrong hands again, that no one else would suffer from our hubris. Gritting my teeth, I focused on the device, willing myself to find a way to disable it. As I floated there, my mind racing, I recalled the discussions we had during the auction, the discussions about the weaponized features, the protocols for safely handling such technology. I needed to remember the codes, the sequences. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the despair and focus. "Come on, Ethan," I whispered to myself. "You can do this." The device responded to my presence, its glow intensifying as I concentrated. I reached out mentally, tapping into the interface, feeling the energy surge beneath my fingertips. It was overwhelming, a flood of information and power that threatened to consume me. But I pushed through, searching for the shutdown sequence. "Deactivate," I commanded, my voice steady as I focused. The device pulsed in response, the glow flickering as I navigated through its systems. "Please, let this work." A wave of energy surged through me, and I felt the device begin to comply. I could see the countdown flashing before me, numbers ticking down ominously. 5, 4, 3. "Please don't let this be for nothing," I pleaded, my heart racing. The countdown continued to drop. 2, 1. With a final surge, I pressed the command. The technology shuddered violently, a ripple of energy dispersing outward before it imploded in on itself. The light engulfed me, a brilliant flash that blinded my senses before everything went dark. The void consumed me, and I felt the last remnants of my consciousness slip away. In those final moments, I thought of Sarah and Marcus. I hoped they had found peace, wherever they were. I hoped they understood the weight of our choices, the price of ambition. As I drifted into darkness, I realized that the universe would continue to spin, indifferent to our failures and dreams. The technology we had fought over, the power we had sought to control, was now lost to the void, a testament to our hubris. And I, Ethan Pierce, would become nothing more than a footnote in the annals of galactic history, a cautionary tale of what could happen when ambition eclipses morality.